Us today or watching our presentation. Today we are joined by Tracy James here from the Admissions and Recruitment Office. And our overview for today's session will be talking about graduate school. So we'll be looking at options and things we should be considering as we're researching graduate schools, either at Grand Valley or at other institutions, as well as thinking about some different sorts of programs and ways to fund yourself. So lots to cover today. I'm going to hand it over to Tracy to talk to us a little bit more about what we should be thinking about when looking at continuing our education.
Great. Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you for the invite to be here today to talk more about graduate school. Again, my name is Tracy James Hare. I am one of the associate directors in the Admissions and Recruitment Office. I am a Grand Valley alum from many, many years ago, otherwise known as, of course, a Laker for a lifetime, a proud Laker alum. I am a longtime staff member in the Admissions and Recruitment Office. And I'm also a Grand Valley parent. So I have a son who is a student here, a senior majoring in cybersecurity. So that's just a little bit about me. And today's presentation is going to be a bit more general in nature. I'll certainly be using Grand Valley references and examples, but please know that after today's presentation, if you have specific questions, we can absolutely have follow-up conversations, or I'd be happy to put you in touch with people in particular programs if that's helpful. So with that said, I am going to jump right in with the more formal part of the presentation today, but it's titled, Is Graduate School Right for Me? So hopefully this will just sort of get you thinking about whether or not graduate school is a good option for you. So our overall agenda is that we are going to talk about the process of finding or identifying the graduate school that is right for you, of course. We're going to also talk about how to determine if a particular graduate school or institution is the right fit for you. We are going to talk about funding for your graduate education, which is always a really, really important topic. And then, of course, how to apply for graduate studies and how might that be different than when you applied for your undergraduate studies. So those are the main topics that I will cover today. All right, so what is graduate school or graduate studies, graduate education? It is going to be a continuation of college above and beyond your four-year bachelor's degree. And there are different sort of levels or categories of graduate studies. So the next couple of slides are going to provide an overview of different terms and definitions that you may or may not already be familiar with. But of course, if you continue your education beyond your bachelor's degree, you will likely be pursuing what's called a master's degree. And Grand Valley in particular has a number of master's degree programs, but these really provide specialized preparation in a particular field of study. Oftentimes, master's degree programs will require you to take many master's level courses. And then many of these programs at the end of your coursework will oftentimes give you the option of completing either a thesis and or a major project. Oftentimes, master's programs will take 1 to 2 years of full-time study, and we can talk a little bit more about the differences between what it means to be a part-time and full-time student. There's also something called professional master's programs, which Grand Valley also has. And this is where you start to see some acronyms. So the MBA would stand for a Master of Business Administration, whereas an MSW is a Master of Social Work. These tend to be more practice-based, so oftentimes you may be required to earn a professional master's degree to work in a particular field of study, or perhaps you may need to earn that professional master's degree for career advancement. And one of the differences is that the professional master's degree programs tend to be a little bit more practice-based. And as I said, you may be required to earn something like this to continue on in your desired field of study or career path. And again, oftentimes they are typically 1 to 2 years of study, although some programs could be as long as 3 years. So, kind of continuing on, there's also another category called doctorate or doctoral programs. You may have heard of someone pursuing or having a PhD, which stands for Doctor of Philosophy. Of course, there are lots of acronyms in higher education, so I'll do my best to explain each and every one of them to you. You may see initials behind someone's name with an EDD. That would be, for instance, a doctorate of education. Oftentimes, someone will pursue a doctoral program because they may want to become a faculty or a professor. However, it would also prepare you to potentially become a researcher and can be applied toward a number of different careers. At the doctoral level, these programs are definitely more focused on research and or teaching, and they are also usually longer in length. So they can be 3, 4, or more years, again, depending on whether you are a part-time or full-time student. And typically at the end, you have a major project or dissertation that you prepare and oftentimes need to sort of present your dissertation and even defend it in a public setting. Also, there is a JD degree. This is the Juris Doctorate degree, and this is the degree that somebody earns when they decide to go to law school. So it is preparing them to become an attorney, and most programs are 3 years, and that would be for full-time study. And then finally, last but not least, an MD is a doctor of medicine. So this is the pathway that someone would go on if they want to become a medical doctor. And this can be a longer journey. It can take, on average, about 7 years, typically 4 years of academic studies and 3 years of residency. So you please don't feel like you need to memorize any of this, but hopefully it's just maybe better explaining some terms that perhaps you've heard of. And so I guess I'll change things up a little bit and just ask you to do a little bit of self-reflection. And obviously, there was a reason why you signed up for today's session, or perhaps a reason you're watching it after it's been recorded. And so I would just encourage you to do a little bit of self-reflection if you've not done so already. Oftentimes, when I meet with students who are thinking about pursuing a graduate degree, it's oftentimes for a particular reason. It could be someone who is at the early stages of their career and they're just sort of beginning, and maybe that graduate degree is necessary for them to start that career path. But in some cases, it could be someone who's been out in the field working for many years and they just want to be able to take their degree to the next step or the next level. And perhaps earning a master's degree is one way of doing that. And also, I meet with students who are also in the field and they just want to do a complete career change. And so, in order to make a career change, again, it may be necessary for them to return to school and pursue graduate studies. So, please take a moment just to give that some thought. I think that's important as part of this entire journey. So, in terms of finding your fit, you know, what do you find exciting? So, again, a little bit more of self-reflection. What are you passionate about? Do you have any specific short-term and long-term career goals? You don't necessarily have to have answers to all of these questions today, but again, just some things to think about and consider. And there are lots of different people who you can talk to help you come up with answers to these questions as you're thinking about whether or not graduate school will be a good choice for you. Also, what are your career goals? Where would you like to see yourself in 5 to 10 years? Are you thinking about pursuing a graduate degree because you want to become a researcher? Or perhaps you, again, want to move into the classroom. Maybe you want to become that faculty member or that professor at a college or a university. In many instances, you'll be a practitioner working in a particular field or career area. And in some cases, I meet with students who know they are interested in pursuing graduate studies, and they're just not exactly sure which graduate program they want to pursue. And so, again, at least here at Grand Valley, we have different tools to kind of help you narrow down what it is you may be interested in studying at the graduate level. Because one of the differences between applying for an undergraduate degree and applying to a graduate degree is usually when you apply for a graduate degree, you're applying for admission into one particular program. All right, so there are many things that you can do on your own or in consultation with others to help you find your best fit when it comes to selecting a graduate school and a graduate program. First of all, there are lots of websites online that have different articles that are research based and that will really speak to the benefits to pursuing and earning a graduate degree. And one of them is listed here on the slide. It's called gradschools.com. So I would encourage you to visit that site if you've not done so already. Also, I think one of the best things you can do is visit different university websites. Um, Many prospective graduate students are in the what I call information gathering stage for on average about 12 to 18 months. And so visiting university websites is sort of the low-hanging fruit. It's a quick and easy thing that you can do. And you can typically find a lot of information and a lot of details to help you get started. And then once you've perhaps narrowed down which institutions you're interested in attending, and hopefully Grand Valley State University is at the top of your list, we encourage you to attend meetings. Perhaps there are graduate school fairs that you can go to, or even just reaching out to someone like myself who works in admissions and recruitment, or even a graduate program director. I think also having lots of different conversations can be helpful, and oftentimes you'll notice different patterns that um, arise as a result of having conversations with lots of different people who are knowledgeable. And then also think about what's important to you. Um, is it the location of the institution? Are you looking to stay in the area that you're currently in geographically? Are you looking to kind of to move to a different area and have sort of a big new adventure? What is the culture of the institution? I know sometimes, depending on your program, you also may be interested in doing research. And so, what are the specific research interest areas or specialty areas of the faculty at that particular institution? Those are all excellent things to not only be thinking about, but also to be asking the faculty at those institutions. Also, determining what are the requirements in terms of grade point average or any standardized test scores, which we'll be talking about as well. What funding is available because um, graduate school can be expensive. So making sure you're identifying all of the funding sources that would be available to you. And then also, depending on where your graduate program is located, what would be the cost of living for that particular area or region. So again, just a few things to think about. So now we are getting to one of my favorite slides where we talk about how to fund your graduate education. So please know that many institutions, including Grand Valley, will have scholarship opportunities available for both undergraduate and graduate students. And as at Grand Valley in particular, as you are hopefully aware, we have a scholarship database called My Scholarships that you can log into at any time and search based on different criteria what graduate student scholarships may be available. Okay. There's also something called a graduate assistantship. This is actually how I paid for my first year of graduate school. It wasn't necessarily something I was real familiar with when I was an undergraduate student. So again, I like to sort of explain what a GA, graduate assistantship position is. Essentially, it is basically an opportunity whereby you are working in a department at the university for probably 10 or 20 hours per week. And in return, they typically provide a tuition stipend that could pay for a part of or potentially all of your graduate tuition. And then, as in addition to that, you typically receive a stipend or a paycheck as well. So, that is a really awesome way to get your graduate school paid for while also gaining some great practical work skills along the way. If you are interested in pursuing a GA position, I would encourage you to start looking for those opportunities early. Grand Valley has about 300 GA positions. However, keep in mind we have a graduate student population of about 3,000 students, so GA positions are limited and highly desirable. Oftentimes, the best way to learn more about a GA position is to number one, talk to your graduate program director or admissions representative. And number two, oftentimes you may be able to visit the university's graduate school website, at least here at Grand Valley, that's where we would list all of those GA job openings. Okay, so that's a really great way to help get graduate school paid for. Loans. So please know that as a graduate student, you can apply for federal financial aid by filling out the FAFSA, another acronym, Free Application for Federal Student Aid. Perhaps this is something you're familiar with already. If not, we have a wonderful financial aid and scholarships office that can help you with that process. Um, but as a result of the FAFSA, you would likely, as a graduate student, be eligible for some loans, and then you'll need to determine whether or not you want to accept the loan or decline the loan. Also, another bucket of potential funding could include any personal funds that you may have. And then finally, for any graduate student who is also working, I would definitely advise you to check with your employer, either Human Resources or Benefits Office, to see if perhaps they offer tuition assistance, because many companies do. And so that's yet another great way to help get your graduate school paid for if you are planning to work while also pursuing your graduate degree. One tip, though, that I'll share is please be sure to find out what all of the details are surrounding any tuition assistance that your employer may provide, because there could be limitations in terms of dollar amounts. I'm also thinking of an example of a friend of mine who did a graduate program at Grand Valley, and his employer helped him pay for his graduate education, which was terrific. But in one class, he struggled and earned a B minus, and he kind of learned the hard way that his employer only paid the tuition if he earned a B or higher in each and every class. Ultimately, he earned his MBA from Grand Valley, and he's a great success story. But again, just an example to make sure you understand all of the expectations if your employer does support you in your graduate education journey. All right. So, one of the very first things that you'll actually do when you have uh, decided which graduate school and program you'd like to pursue is to apply for graduate admission. And so we're going to talk just sort of generally here and then more specifically as we go throughout the presentation. But please know that graduate application requirements will vary depending on the type of program that you are applying to. Some of the more standard application requirements, however, could include anything from an essay or personal statement to submitting recommendation letters, as well as submitting official transcripts, possibly a resume. There could even be an interview process. Also, please know that some graduate programs may require that you submit a standardized test score. So again, lots of acronyms. So the GRE is the graduate record exam. And I would just compare this to, for instance, if you ever had to take perhaps the ACT or SAT when you were in high school. So it's going to be a very similar concept. The GMAT is very specific to graduate business programs. That would be the Graduate Management Admissions Test. The MCAT is typically required by medical schools. That is the medical college admissions test. And then you may have guessed it, the LSAT is required by law schools, and that is the law school admissions test. All right. And again, not only will application requirements vary, but application deadlines will vary as well. So for instance, here at Grand Valley, we have some graduate programs that will have application deadlines as early as September or October for the following academic year, whereas other graduate programs may allow students to apply right up until June or July for that coming fall semester. So it can vary quite a bit. I feel like I'll be saying that a lot. It can vary. If your graduate program does require you to submit an essay or personal statement, oftentimes they will ask you to talk about your educational background, as well as why you're interested in pursuing a particular program, as well as that particular institution. In terms of letters of recommendation, um, I would recommend that you ask people who are best able to speak to your ability to study at the graduate level successfully. That could include current or former professors, but it could also include a colleague, a mentor, a coworker, a supervisor. I've had a graduate student ask me if they could ask someone from their church, and I think absolutely it makes sense if that is someone who, again, can speak to your ability to study at the graduate level successfully. I know it kind of goes without saying, but I don't generally recommend asking a family member to provide a recommendation for you. Also, I would encourage you to ask your recommenders in advance if this is something that they're willing to do for you, because number one, I think it's just a polite and courteous thing to do. And number two, your recommenders will be well positioned and prepared to provide that recommendation instead of perhaps being caught off guard or surprised when they receive a recommendation request come through. Okay. All right, so when you apply, graduate programs are typically looking at a number of factors when they are reviewing applications. Again, I'll use another Grand Valley example, but I know all of our graduate programs generally like to see an undergraduate cumulative or overall grade point average of a 3.0 or higher based on a 4.0 grading scale. Some of our graduate programs like to see GPAs um, a little bit higher than that. And then in some cases, the student might fall just below that. And so if that were the case, I would suggest having a conversation with someone in the graduate program. If you are currently a student, we obviously encourage you to take advantage of any academic support programs or resources that may be available to you, such as a writing center or the speech lab or the statistical consulting center. Institutions fortunately have a lot of resources built in to help you be as successful as you can be. I mentioned earlier some of the standardized exams that you may be required to take and submit scores. If so, please know that there are lots of resources online as well as probably available within your institution that you can tap into to help you be successful. I will admit that I've been working in admissions and recruitment for a very long time, and I have not met a ton of students who are genuinely super excited about standardized testing. Again, here at Grand Valley, not very many of our graduate programs require standardized testing, but a few of them do. And then last but not least, for some of our international student applicants, if their primary language is not English, depending on the country in which they reside, they may be required to submit official English language proficiency scores. So just be aware of that as well. So how do you prepare for this application process? Well, again, if you are currently an undergraduate student, there are things that either hopefully you've been doing already or that you'll be doing as you get ready to graduate. But certainly participating in undergraduate research and presentations, um, participating in conferences, whether they be local, regional, or national conferences that hopefully are related to your major, of course, being involved, whether it's through student life, student organizations, volunteering, mentoring, teaching, working part-time. Of course, just trying to have that well-rounded application is always going to be a terrific thing that graduate programs like to see, particularly if you are also perhaps able to hold a leadership position. I always just say, like, try to have a well-rounded resume, which gives you so much to talk about in a potential interview setting and will help round out your resume as well. All right, so we are down to the last slide. So just to sort of recap what we've been talking about, this session is hopefully helping you to think about your future career path and whether or not that will include a graduate degree program. There are lots of things you can be doing while you are still an undergraduate student. One of them being research your programs of interest. And I think a great starting point is by visiting university websites, including the GVSU website. Um, Please familiarize yourself with application requirements because they do vary by institution and by program. And of course, explore funding options. There are lots of ways to help fund your graduate studies. And then if you haven't done so already, hopefully getting to know your faculty, getting to know staff members here at the university. Um, that's something I love about GVSU, our class sizes and the fact that classes are taught by faculty. You have the opportunity to build those relationships because ultimately the goal would be really that they would know you well enough and vice versa, where you would feel comfortable to ask them to be a recommender for you. And then last but not least, it's never too early to start thinking about and even working on your essay or personal statement if one is required. And again, as a Grand Valley student, you can take advantage of all the resources that are already available to you, such as the Writing Center. So with that said, I am going to stop sharing my screen. Uh, that ends the formal part of my presentation today, but I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
One that I've heard students ask me before, and I'm interested in your perspective. So, if you're looking at a couple different institutions to attend grad school, sometimes very similar programs can have different cognates or those letters after the name. So, for example, maybe one school will offer a program as a Master's of Ed, but another's would be a Master's of Art of Teaching. Um, or, there are other types of business programs like Masters of Management versus Masters of Business Administration. So, as long as like the programs you're looking at help you reach your professional goals, does it really matter what the exact name of your graduate degree is called or what type of master's degree or doctoral degree that you earn?
That's a great question. And I think in those cases, it's really important to have conversations with probably someone directly in the program who has the most knowledge and expertise so they can help you understand the differences between those programs. And ultimately, you are correct. They have very similar names or titles or what have you, but there are probably going to be some slight nuances between the two. And so that's where I would think you would want to look very closely at course requirements, number of credits completed to complete the program, as well as what we call culminating experience. So what will be the expectation at the end of the program? Will it be a major project? Will it be a thesis? Will it be a comprehensive exam? So again, there are probably lots of similarities, but just learning exactly what the differences are, and which one will best support your needs and interests. So hopefully that's helping to answer your question. If it's all right, I also just wanted to talk briefly about the difference between being like a part-time and a full-time student, because I know that that can be very different. Typically, as an undergraduate student, you're considered a full-time student if you're taking 12 or more credits a semester, which is usually 4 or 5 classes. As a graduate student, it's very different. We consider a graduate student, at least at Grand Valley, to be someone who's taking 9 or more credits a semester, which typically would be three 3 credit hour classes. And so that you're not taking as many classes, you're not taking as many credits, but obviously at the graduate level, classes are a little bit more involved, right? So for someone who may be working full time, they probably don't want to take 3 classes. They probably want to take maybe 1 or 2 grad classes at a time. So, but I just wanted to explain that because that's another big difference between the two that doesn't always get explained to students in my experience.
Yeah, and if you don't mind me also sort of adding on to this, we had talked a little earlier about assistantships, and I've
Mhm.
also used those to fund um, graduate school. So sometimes if you are hoping to get an assistantship, it's always helpful to also look at what the requirements for the assistantship are, because some may require that a student is full-time at the graduate level, and some may be available to part-time students.
Yes.
Yeah, one more note on assistantships too is that, you mentioned even making sure that the school is a good fit for you, that there's a good culture. And of course, while that is certainly broadly true, there are also kind of good cultural fits at schools depending on what type of institution it is, such as a
Mhm.
really research heavy institution. You mentioned this, but sometimes that can also determine the types of assistantships that are available. So if it's a very high research institution, maybe they have a lot more intern or assistantship opportunities that are in research labs, or it's a very teaching heavy institution and they have got a lot of people who are working on their doctorates to become faculty. A lot of graduate students might be expected to teach, where at Grand Valley we've got a range, but most of
Yeah.
them are really sort of doing work supporting our departments or doing student support. And so yeah, I just to mention too that sometimes those assistantships and the types are tied to the programs the school has and the type of school. So that's important to
Abs
know ahead of time.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. You are spot on. So there are different types of GA positions as well. So something for everyone, depending on your interest area. So yes, I'm just looking to see if we covered everything in my notes. I guess I would just also add that the Admissions and Recruitment Office at Grand Valley State University does offer a number of workshops if those are of interest to you. So, for instance, if you decide that you would like to pursue a graduate degree specifically at Grand Valley, I host graduate application workshops that really outline each step of the process. We actually go through our online graduate application. We also have virtual information sessions that will talk more about, what it looks like and means to be a graduate student at Grand Valley. And then should you apply and get admitted, we offer next step sessions as well. So, sort of outlining all the different things you need to do even after you're admitted, including attending new graduate student orientation. So very similar to your undergraduate journey. Please know that there are lots of people and resources to help you along the way. So you don't have to have it all figured out on your own. That's why people like me and the rest of our graduate recruiters exist, not only here at Grand Valley, but other institutions as well.
Great. Well, if there are no other questions, I will just also remind you that in addition to all of the great resources available to us through the admissions office, and again, we had an overview of that, just a reminder that your academic advisor can also help you prepare for graduate school too. So once you start doing research and as you discover what are the prerequisites, what sort of other things outside of class will I have to do for part of this application, or perhaps you are trying to integrate very specific prerequisite courses, things like that. Your advisor can also help you sort of think through this and make sure that we are strengthening your application as much as we can on the academic side. So yes, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for being a part of the team that supports our current adult degree completion students, and especially those that are hoping to go to graduate school when they finish.
My pleasure. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity. This was fun.
Okay, I just ended the recording. So, oh, I'm so sorry, Tracy. Actually, I think you might have to end the recording now that you're the host.
In a quarter mile, turn right on the state southwest.
Just looking for. Oh, here we go.